What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Ask a CISSP. So this is the complimentary podcast to the other side of the firewall, where we talk about the latest and greatest of cybersecurity news, as well as we highlight those movers and shakers and glass ceiling breakers, those people of color who've made it to the other side of the proverbial firewall. Speaking of which, I have returning guest Angela Diaz. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
No, that's awesome. So we talked probably fall of last year, I want to say,
Yes.
when
Gosh,
you were on the
time does go
podcast.
really fast.
Time is moving so like it's crazy. Like I'm getting older. You're not, but I am getting older.
So kind.
It feels like time just is constantly on the move. But we talked about your background, your experience. We talked about Fraud Fight Club, which is one of your initiatives, which is super awesome. At the time, we were both working for the same organization, but you have since started a new role. So I want to cover that and just break down who you are, remind the listeners of what you do and how important it is, and then talk about any current and upcoming initiatives. So without further ado, how are you doing?
I am doing amazing. I am now located in Charlotte, North Carolina. So I'm excited to be in, what I consider to be the hub of the financial services activity and even more so for fraud and financial crime. So I am absolutely enjoying settling into my new city and being able to actually meet in person with a lot of people that I've collaborated with over the years via different conferences and companies. I am still in second line risk management.
Okay.
I've spent the majority of my career in risk management. I spent a good amount of time in financial crimes compliance, specifically KYC, and I spent several years in frontline risk, fraud management, covering several different business units. And really, the past several years, I've been really focused on assisting with what does quality second line risk management oversight look like for the future, because second line risk management is still not new, but I think there's a specific version that's new in the
Right.
oversight function, as the financial services industry is just really wrapping its head around what good frameworks and policies look like and how to structure themselves. And so, yeah, the past few years I've been at several different banks assisting them in building out their second line of defense for fraud risk oversight. And I'm currently working at TD Bank. So very excited, new role for me. And yeah, just 4 weeks in, so very new and just a lot of great work to be done, great bank, and I'm just excited to bring my skill set to the table.
So what's always awesome with talking to you, because you have over a decade of experience within second line and as well as fraud. So I am brand new to second line. So now I have about a year under my belt in doing it, and it's always really interesting to see the difference, the maturity scale, right? Like you've been knocked out of the park. You are, a rock star when it comes to second line defense and fraud. And like you said, there's a weird kind of pocket, right? Like so. I had no idea what second line was until I started to get a little bit deeper into cybersecurity and then eventually working in a financial institution. But you yourself have been there, 13 plus years and doing this. And when I speak to people, either when I speak to someone, either they get it or they just absolutely like, who are you and why are you talking to me? It's just a weird dichotomy between the two. So in your current role, so we both when I started talking to you, we worked for Discover, and Discover was acquired by Capital One, and now you work for TD. How has the transition been, aside from just the city change, right? Because like Arizona is very hot, both figuratively and literally, to going to, where you're currently located and then working for a new organization.
I mean, I think that a lot of people love and thrive in working one place for 20 plus years. And I think that that's totally acceptable and fine. What I really enjoyed about my career trajectory is getting to work at so many different types of financial institutions that are all going through similar risk transformation. I've learned so much about how to evaluate where each one is at, what their needs are for that particular institution, what their challenges are, and how to kind of create a framework and seeing all kinds of different versions for what that governance and structure looks like, whether that's the policies, the framework, how they set up their oversight function. Is it primarily data driven? Is it via in person and on the spot effective challenge? It's like oversight can be defined so many different ways. So I think that anytime I've gone into a bank, like, and taken a new role, it's always looked exactly the same. As far as where are you at now? What are the current policies and standards that you have in place? What does your framework look like? And then where are the gaps? And getting to work from there. So it's new and different and challenging each time, but throughout the years there is still a core kind of framework and tool belt that I have that I can apply, kind of copy paste, for lack of better term, that is essentially regulator standards, industry standards that will look the same way from bank to bank. So I personally love that balance. You get to be certainly creative and evaluate and analyze the current industry, the current bank you're at, their current conditions, but then you also are following kind of this established industry standard and framework. There's also a big teaching element to it. So a lot of getting to like educate business partners. And so each time I've started a new role at a new company, I get to know a whole new set of really amazing fraud leaders and risk partners. And I get to learn from them and be taught by them. And that exposure is great. And then I also get to, of course, teach everything that I know. It is going fantastic, and it's the path that I've always been on. So it comes with challenges, of course, and stress, but overall it's really really rewarding work. Like, it's oversight function is super important, and the way that I best describe it is when you are a leader in the operations environment, it can be hard to effectively challenge and see the opportunities within your own work, because the bias is there that you're responsible for leading that team and investigating the fraud prevention, the fraud detection. And I think the oversight function is really important because we get to analyze and see it through an unbiased view and take those findings and help the whole bank elevate itself to a better standard. And that is through partnership, collaboration, and teaching. So, second line is not about telling the front line, pointing out to the front line errors, mistakes. Same thing with operations leaders. We're not there to criticize or give them feedback on how they're running their business. It's very specifically around helping the entire bank understand their risk environment better and elevate it to that higher standard. So when I explain it that way, I feel like people kind of have a little bit more of an aha moment than if we look at kind of maybe some of the more traditional ways second line of defense or oversight has been defined. But
No, I think that's very well put. Because a big struggle for me initially was just the partnership aspect. Like I've always had, even in the military, because I come from 2 decades of military experience. You still had to partner and find out what people's currencies are, and teach and learn and mentor and all that good stuff. But there was a little bit more of it's more of a coercive institution, right? Like, regardless of how you feel about a person, they still have a certain rank, a certain amount of power, or they can, have a certain amount of influence. However, what I've learned now in the civilian sector is a lot of that goes out of the window, because it's really is like, I need to partner with you, learn what your needs are, and get you to trust me in order to be able to conduct that oversight, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm not I'm no longer like a master sergeant and like, you have to do what I say.
right.
It's more of like, who is Ryan? What does he know? What's his background experience? What can he do to add value to our specific division or department? That has been a very much learning experience for me as I gone along this journey. So when it comes to fraud, I know we spoke about it in our last session together, and just the sheer importance, right? Like how it impacts everyone's life, whether it be, especially in the financial institution, whether it be, on the client side or internal or whomever, how it has an impact on people's lives. What tools, are you bringing to bear in your new organization, or what are you doing that's different than your previous organization?
mean, without going into like specifics about each
Right. No.
organization, I think that it's much easier to put it in the perspective of like how I've seen the industry evolve, I guess, the past couple of years,
Okay.
which what I've seen throughout the industry the past several years, and this also comes from just being able to go to a lot of conferences and hear other industry experts speak about what they're seeing, which I feel is more valuable than the confines of like our own walls of our 9 to 5, is kind of like this ongoing theme of originally everybody was talking about, I'll use AI as a very good example. So everybody started talking about AI several years ago. And I think as a whole, as an industry, we were kind of like, that feels really far away. We don't even know what it's really going to look like for us. And we were really focused on what we should be focusing on, which is very much like tactical. What's in front of us right now? What are we seeing right now in our data, losses, et cetera, and solving for it with, of course, a typical short term, long term strategy type of runway approach. But I think what I saw happen over the past 2 years is we went from that as an industry to then, okay, let's start kind of thinking about how we're seeing AI show up in the fraud itself, which kind of got everybody panicking a little bit more, because then banks are like, well, wait a second, we're all seeing fraud that looks a little different. What is this? And I think it's very difficult to kind of know in complex financial institutions, like for certain, that fraud is happening because they're using agentic AI or they're using AI tools. So it was like a little bit of a panic moment, but still business as usual. And then I think now what's different is there is so much in the press with how AI is showing up and how fraud is just literally scaling at a rapid pace, um, because we are certain now that fraudsters are using artificial intelligence. There's reports out there that talk about um, AI bots that are able to orchestrate like massive rapid attacks all at once in any given environment. And that lends itself even to cyber as well. Frank on Fraud did an article that had some really solid examples from the industry on that. And so now what we're seeing is catch up. Like all of a sudden, a lot of industry catch up. Like, okay, AI is here and it is came fast and furious. And it's this catch up of how do we actually understand how to use AI to our benefit? Because I've been saying for a couple of years, we should really start thinking about not only how fraudsters will use AI to their benefit, but how can we leverage it to our benefit in our environment, in our solutions? How do we build frameworks around that? And now it's like, and we have to catch up. We have to catch up because there is the legwork behind drafting a framework and policies, and even under wrapping your head around what AI is and what the appropriate use cases are for it in the financial services industry are still very much up for debate. You will see banks that are taking the approach of, we don't understand AI yet. We're not going to touch it as far as introducing it into their environment for use. And then you'll see other banks that are very much more forward thinking and are like, nope, we want to use AI. In fact, we want to use it any chance that we can get. And they are rapidly drafting AI policies, hiring people that have spent the past couple of years becoming subject matter experts in AI compliance to kind of introduce that into the bank safely. And then there's kind of this middle bucket that is very much like, okay, maybe we will start using this a little bit for how we work internally to be more efficient, but they're still not ready to introduce it into their prevention and detection strategies. So that is definitely from more of an industry kind of perspective, like what I've seen the past few years and how I've seen it kind of change and evolve over the past couple of years as far as specifically in fraud.
No, and that's a really good roadmap because we talk about it almost every week now on the podcast. There's always some new scheme or some new uh evolution of fraud that's currently happening when it comes to taking advantage of our elderly or children and things of that nature. Seems to be that people are just because you want to trust, right? Like whether it be like, okay, my grandson is calling me and saying he's going to jail. Like, don't tell my parents, just send me the money or, you know, send me gift cards, based upon whatever current fraud type that's going on. I don't know if we talked about it last time we spoke, but I actually had a book fraud scheme approach me. Yeah. So I'd never heard of it before because there's infinite amount of fraud
Right.
actors. But yeah, they reached out to me saying like, "Hey, we're established book club. We have so many members. There's like 1,500 members. We would like to review your book." So obviously, as an author, I'm like, "Yeah, please, please, please do. Like, do I need to send you a
Of
copy? Like,
course.
how
Yeah.
how do we proceed?" And then it starts to escalate from there, where it gets to like, "Oh, well, we have these offerings. If you pay this, and then that's immediately it flips." A flag like, oh, okay, here we go. And then, but what was interesting to me, and I wrote a couple of short articles on LinkedIn about it, how they were able to impersonate somebody so well. Like
Mhm.
the person that they were impersonating actually was the organizer of the book club. Same photos, same signature block, same address, different phone number, like just slight tweaks they're able to
Yep.
perform and sound like a real person, right? As opposed to either someone who doesn't speak the language natively or some agent or bot that's been created to do it at scale. And it really fascinated me. Like it hurt my pride a little bit too, because I was like, oh man.
You're like, "Wait a minute, how did I almost fall for this?"
Yeah. But luckily, as soon as things started to progress, they started to show their hand fairly quickly. And it wasn't for a large sum of money. It was like $15 for this or $40 for that.
Right.
So I guess at scale that does add up to a lot of money for them. But when you think of, fraud, you usually think like, oh, they're going to try to get me for hundreds of dollars or thousands
Right.
of dollars, things of that nature. But it's a sliding scale, um, and they're patient. So it's really incredible how you know impressive these bad guys are on the internet.
And it's really hard, and we talked about this a little bit last time, when you think about, the large dollar amount, scams and people that get hit. Those are super common, and often with how the regulations are written right now and how kind of the guidance is oftentimes when the fraud occurs outside of the bank as part of a scam, it falls into this really horrible bucket of the victim was tricked into giving up credentials or sending the wire themselves or clicking a link that resulted in this. So our customers actually taking actions. So they're technically authorized, but they were tricked into it via a scam. It's like there's still this horrible, like vague space, and I think we're trying to catch up as an industry, both in financial services and in the regulators on how to treat that, where customers are still sitting with that loss because the bank can only get a certain amount of the money recovered back. And the bank is, feeling justified and making a determination that they should not accept the loss because the fraud technically happened outside of the walls of banking and the customer authorized it. There's this really horrible accountability struggle that happens there. Banks are accountable for being able to check unusual activity in their environment. So there is the counter argument that I feel is really, really important around, well, had that customer ever sent a wire like that? Had they ever sent a wire over that dollar amount? Had they ever sent a wire, period? And like, how are you factoring that into your prevention and detection? But it's still very, very, very gray. And I think we're seeing different banks take different stances. And that's the part of kind of the scams and the AI, also the introduction of AI, that is very, very difficult to kind of wrap your head around, is who's accountable, who is taking this loss. And the fraudsters don't care because they've run off with the money, and they're more than happy to just run off into the sunset with $500,000 and let the banks and the victim and any other, company that might be involved, it might go to litigation, like, and then you have the courts involved, law enforcement's trying to investigate it, like everybody's running around, but the fraudsters have taken off and with this money. So that is definitely one of the harder things to think about. Is we think about kind of how easy it could be for someone that's even involved in this industry to get tricked. I had an experience like several months ago where I was trying to figure out if I needed to pay duties on a FedEx package that was being held with customs. And I put into just Google like FedEx website. So I'm trying to look for where to look up my transaction or whatever, and a website that looked identical to the FedEx website. I mean, it was perfect. It was flawless,
Right.
came up. So I started clicking on things and being asked for some information. And I was like, wait a minute, this is starting to look and feel really funny for what I'm trying to do. So I literally didn't do anything outside of like type my name in before I was like, this seems really funny. But it definitely was a fake site that was put up to get people to think that they were paying whatever their customs collections, etc. So it is the quality of some of these like scams and phishing attempts has gotten so phenomenally difficult for us to detect, even as experts, that they are more successful. And how would we expect people that are not experts, such as ourselves, to not easily fall for some of these scams? It's very, very complex when it comes down to it. It really, really is.
Right. So, and not to get on my soapbox, but it does make me worried about the introduction of AI agents to do things on your behalf. Just because, like, for a person to do something, whether it be a transaction or um, in this case, you're searching for, information to then do what you need to do. It takes time, right? Like you still have to click through everything. You have to think and process and things of that nature. And these agents are able to, on your behalf, able to engage and execute at an alarmingly fast pace, which is great at scale if you're, trying to do trading or purchasing of
Right.
large, like if you wanted to, whatever PS6, whenever that comes out for Christmas, it would be able to do it on your behalf. But what if it went to, said fraud website and tried to make that purchase? Just makes me even more apprehensive, right? It doesn't have to think as slowly as we do in order to gauge and spend a lot of money. So it does make me nervous. And I've been posting recently because I'm not AIist, right? Like I love AI. I use it for everything I do with the podcast, but I just see the adoption is just moving sort of fast for me.
I agree.
Going beyond augmentation tool, right? Like as an augmentation tool, I'm all for it, right? Like it helps me to generate content,
Mhm.
thumbnails, edit, do transcription, things of that nature. But it seems as though a lot of companies are getting a little bit ahead of themselves, right? Cart before the horse, and they're trying to replace real identities with AI identities. And I'm a little nervous about the future, especially when it comes to cybersecurity and fraud.
I agree. I agree. That's why I think that there should have been a lot more thought the past couple of years in how AI was going to show up in fraud. But in addition to that, how are we going to use it to our advantage and build it into our prevention and detection strategies? Because it is about responsible use. AI is the same as anything else in terms of being able to do a risk assessment over it, to determine what the risks will look like in any environment, what controls you would need to put over top of it to manage the risk of introducing AI into your environment, testing, and then monitoring, right? Those core like functions and framework, you can introduce anything. At one point, maybe, I don't know, a decade ago, it happened with RPA. People were like, everybody wanted to use robotic process automation everywhere all of a sudden. But robotic process automation, you can't really use it to make decisions for you. It is very much just move this to this next step. But people tried to use it improperly, and then they didn't actually have any controls over top of it, and it would break and it would not perform and it would cause chaos. So for me, AI has similar risk involved in terms of knowing what is appropriate for us to use it for versus what is it not appropriate to use it for. And it's about whether we think we can control for it. So if we're going to use AI for a certain purpose, then we have to have done an assessment that appropriately tells us that by introducing AI for that purpose, this is how we're going to test, control, and monitor for it. And I think that there is, for AI specifically, there are very, very, very specific and complex nuances that have to be considered because AI technically can make decisions, it can hallucinate, it can pull inaccurate information from different sources. You just really, if you don't quite understand what artificial intelligence is versus what it isn't, then you cannot assess it properly. And that's the big risk that I see right now is people not knowing what it is versus what it is not understanding and knowing appropriate use. And then that completely, if you can't cover those two things, then you can't figure out how to assess the risk and manage it.
No, I wholeheartedly agree. And again, not to pander on AI, or I should say not to beat AI down, right? Like it's a person. My fear, like you said, people not having an understanding. And again, these I talked to Ahmed Austin from Sci 3 a couple weeks ago, and he was bringing up how when he goes into a new environment, he discusses what he does or he consults with upper management. He always asks them, "How many employees do you have?" And their response is always they only count the human employees. But it's like, okay, well, I know for a fact that you have these other identities that are on your network that are making decisions or executing tasks and things of that nature. How are you, accounting for them? How are you logging their activities for audits, for artifacts, and to find out what went wrong if it does, execute or launch or do something it shouldn't be doing. And they're not really thinking about that because they again they think these things are just like word on steroids, and
Right. Like
it's
they're just
really past
completely
that.
error proof. They're
Yeah.
completely error proof and, yeah, it's very, very and I love that perspective too, because the other thing that is happening, and anybody that, like, watched the Super Bowl saw this, like, the Super Bowl was, like the commercials, so many of the Super Bowl commercials were for AI. So it's, like, is clearly a very big push for AI, and then you're also seeing, or I'm seeing, a lot of, articles and press around companies that are like, "We had this, like, great efficiency and headcount reduction with the introduction of AI," or we are projected to have this big headcount savings, efficiency savings in this year because we're going to use AI for this percentage of our workforce. So you're seeing like so much of that kind of buzz and press, and it all sounds really great when you put it in a commercial or into a press release, but what does that actually look like in the environment? And I think it's going to be, to your point, I agree with you, proceed with caution because there could be a
Right.
very, very rude awakening if you try to replace humans with AI in an appropriate way.
Yeah, I think we're in the future, hopefully the far future, not the near future, we're going to see an insider threat like we've never seen before, and it's going to make people panic, and it'll be unfortunate because it's going to cause issues, but they're just not accounting for this potential. And some of it's AI washing, right? Like some companies just want to reduce headcount, and they're saying, "Oh, we got these tools," and really, there was one that was found to be just 100 dudes in a garage somewhere, right, to pretend to be an AI engine and agents. So it's kind of crazy just how, satirical things are becoming.
Yes, yes, it really is. It really is.
But yeah, I think we really need to proceed with caution, especially when it comes to risk. So I think that's the intersection between the two of us, right? When it comes to cybersecurity and fraud, we have that platform between that is risk that tries to account for a lot of this. But again, if you're not trying to be proactive, if you're not trying to build it into like it doesn't have to be from scratch, right? Like we already have a lot of policies and programs, right? Your TPRM, right? Third party risk management, your ERM, enterprise risk management. Like these things already exist. It's really just like how do we add AI into this scheme to make sure that we're accounting for it. And I think that's what us as risk professionals really have to do a better job of describing. But at the same time, the C-suite also has to take it into consideration before they make these huge swings into the AI forum, so to speak. So I think that's awesome. I think you bring up a lot of really good points, specifically when it comes to fraud, because I think a lot of people they just think like, oh, it can't happen to me because I'll be able to suss it out. But
Mhm.
these things are really sophisticated and they're only getting better and better over time. Like you educated me last time we spoke, where I was like, well, it is a loss of quality of life. It's a loss of monetary funds. But then I said, oh, but at least people aren't dying because of it. And you educated me like, no, these things do tie together when it comes to, whether it be romance schemes or outright loss of, savings or retirement and things of that nature. Like it does cost people their lives, which is incredibly sad.
Yeah. Yeah. It's absolutely devastating, and some of the recent ones I've heard about were, I mean, over $500,000 to just one, singular person, like, and that happens all the time. It could be I've seen stats, where individuals lost $16 million. I mean, it goes way far beyond, like, what most of us probably think about, which is like, "Ugh, $1,000 in fraudulent charges. I caught it super quickly, called my bank, and they stopped them or reimbursed me." That is what most of us kind of think that about when we think about fraud. But fraud at true scale and what we really have seen with some of the more recent scams is just absolutely, absolutely like devastating. It is not a ruin your day thing. It's a ruin your life thing for so many people, specifically the vulnerable population. There's just so many factors that, make someone more vulnerable than somebody else to falling for a scam. And there is certain like guidance and regulations in place for that as well, but it doesn't stop it from happening.
No, absolutely. And I like how you said that it's life impacting regardless of the dollar figure. If you try to steal $16 million from me, good luck. But when you think of scale, right? Like there was a time where I was an airman, like early in my career in the military, and like just several dollars to several $100s would have crippled me between paychecks, right? Like that would be devastating. Like I can't pay my rent because something has happened. So it all comes down to scale. So, like, I can only imagine what it would feel like to lose $500,000, $16 million. Like, it'd be devastating like, to most people. So, where do you see the future of fraud prevention kind of going? Like, what do you project will be the thing that either we jump on to protect us from the future of fraud, or what may be around the corner? We just don't see it coming.
Ooh. What I think the future should look like for prevention and detection is I think we have to get better at real time. And what I mean by that is real time analysis, specifically link analysis. So being able to holistically get a risk picture of a specific account, transaction, etc. in that moment and being able to action it. How do we do that? Don't ask me that. I don't know. But what I see happening is digital banking is the future. It's here now. Everything moves quickly in a digital banking environment and everything is far more anonymous. We can talk all day about like IP location, device ID, did they multi-factor authentication? Like we can talk OTP, we can talk about all those passkeys, we can talk about all those things individually, but we know that they can all be bypassed. We see it all day, every day. So, and the other thing that with digital banking is we have to allow our customers to move their money. Like, we can't just hold people's money from moving while we take all the time in the world to try to figure out if it's fraud or not. We can do that to a certain extent. That is obviously how our prevention controls work. We do transaction monitoring. We will hold suspicious transactions and we will review them before they're able to move through. But I think with where the fraud is going and with how savvy they are getting with their use of AI and their ability to use AI bots to just do multiple attempts in our environment and quickly kind of record what path bypasses it and then repeat it extremely quickly all at once lends us to absolutely have to think more about real time link analysis so that we are not even 12 hours behind the fraudsters, because those amount of hours is enough for them to completely create a spike in fraud losses and trends, and then we are then trying to catch up with what we need to do differently. And I think that layering is great, but not understanding how to link our layers together to make real time decisions needs to be where we go in the future.
I think that's fascinating, and it kind of goes hand in hand with something I've been doing as a kind of a side project was trying to figure out like the from a cyber risk perspective, like what are the client facing assets that will cause either disruption or just a bad time, right? You also have to account for, like you said, you can't just hold people's money forever. Like that can cause a person to not want to do transactions with you any longer. It might cause them to want to go to a different bank. I remember early on, and again, take Airman Williams' example. We were working with a credit union, a small town. It was either a credit union or a large bank. I went with the credit union because they had like some incentives or what have you. But like the fifth or sixth time that my card got declined for no apparent reason, I I was like, I'm done with this, right? I never went back. I went with a different bank and I moved on. And it was just because of that friction. Like users don't like that friction. So I do agree. Like it is a matter of like how do we safely stop the fraud from happening and have the proper coverages to stop mass movement or repeated attacks, but also not upset the customer, because at the end of the day, if their money is lost, they're going to be upset. If they're unable to make the transaction right, they go into whatever the gas station to swipe for their gas, or some clients are going into the dealership to purchase a vehicle or a boat or whatever. That really makes them upset, right? Like I
Mhm.
swiped the card, the money didn't go through. And from our perspective, like, no, we stopped you from making, like, potentially someone else could have been swiping somewhere in the showroom
Right.
somewhere to steal your money. So we had this precaution, but it still upsets them, right? So how do you balance the two to, okay, how do we, as close as possible to perfect our analysis of like, is this good or is this not good? Like, can we let this money go, or do we need to hold it and give them a call to figure out if they've lost control of their card or their account number. It's a very delicate balance.
It is. It is. It is. And that's
So
always the
it's
challenge
always very interesting.
with fraud, for sure. We're looking to give our customers like a seamless customer journey, and we want them to have all the conveniences in the world for how they manage their money. We have to also, and that's the other reason why the prevention and detection that we put in place has to be so accurate. We can't have high false positive rates. We can't manage clearing all of that. And it's not a good experience for the customer. The ability to even clear a false positive, to your point, can be very frustrating. I had an experience, I got a new phone, unboxed it in the morning, got it all, set up. I went to like an outdoor kind of shopping festival with all these vendors, like a craft market, made a bunch of purchases as I'm walking around this craft market. And then all of a sudden it gets declined. And I knew it was because I got the new phone. I'm like, that's the only thing that's changed. Is I have a new device. And it was over the weekend. So it was like really, really hard to get it lifted. Like had to call one number and then I had to get transferred to another number, all while I'm literally at a booth trying to make a purchase. So it is very frustrating. Of course, I had grace and empathy being a fraud fighter. I'm like, oh, I know
Right.
why. And I know I have to go through this, but it didn't make it any more pleasant while I'm in the middle of a craft fair trying to like block my ear. It's loud. I'm trying to hear over the phone and get it cleared. And I actually ended up giving up and just calling the next day and doing what I had to do to get it cleared. But thankfully I had another payment method, so that was not a problem.
Right.
Everyone just doesn't have that, or it might be a much more important purchase than what I was just, shopping at a craft fair. So it is a really big challenge. It is.
No, absolutely. So you're saying, the false positives. It's really been making me mad the past couple of weeks. So, I have outside of my 9 to 5, I have a small business, right? A LLC. And you get a lot of spam and phishing attempts because you're on public record. So people I don't know how they have the time in the day, but they go through and they find these companies and they reach out to them and say, "Hey, you need to renew your whatever for the year," and you just keep getting these emails over and over again. So I'll get the email like, "I recognize that it's a phishing attempt. I'll report it as phishing," and then it'll say, "Oh yeah, we found this link." Like it'll send you back a memo basically saying like, "Oh yeah, we found this link. This link is fraudulent," and it's supposed to make you feel rewarded for reporting the phishing attempt. But I'm like, "But you received this link. Like it went through all of the exchange servers." And all this other, detection software to get to me in my eyeballs for me to say, no, this is not right. And then for you to cooperate, say, oh yeah, you're right. It's not right. I'm like, so frustrated. But I get it, right? Like it's just, there's no such thing as a perfect system.
Yep.
So you still have to use your own ability to suss out and make sure that it's appropriate, won't get you, in some trouble in the future. So I have to ask, so how is the adjustment from I know you were in Arizona. I think we talked about it. Like the only place I ever saw a cactus catch fire was Arizona. To moving to somewhere that's a little bit cooler and actually pretty cold right now.
It is freezing right now. It was actually really exciting because I was living here during the snowstorm that hit Charlotte a couple of weeks ago.
Wow.
We
Okay.
got 9 to 11 inches. I think it was the first time in 20 to 30 years that Charlotte had seen that kind of snowstorm. And of course, that happened literally a week after I got here. But I actually enjoyed it because I grew up in the Northeast. And then I, of course, was only living in Phoenix for 8 years. But another part of why I wanted to kind of make my way back over to the East Coast was I was missing a little bit of diversity in my weather. Like, okay, I might appreciate a
Mhm.
cloudy day. I might appreciate some rain. I might appreciate like some snow flurries. So I was definitely looking forward to the change in weather. I was not prepared my first week here to have the worst storm in 30
Right.
years, but I just kind of like cozied up and hunkered down. And I'm like literally in the middle of the city. So out my window, I can see the entire city. And there was people skiing in the streets. I saw somebody with a quad. I mean, it was quite entertaining because nobody could
That's pretty
drive.
crazy. Right.
We don't have like plows and salt and dirt the way that other cities do because we don't have snow. So it was really just hunker down and wait for the sunshine to do its thing. So yeah, it was rough for a few days.
Got you. You could definitely keep that. Like, I think it was probably 2 years into our move to Florida. We finally threw away our snow shovel. We are like, nope, not gonna need this ever again. I hope anyway, right? But it's been pretty cold, like Florida cold in quotation marks, right? Lizards, fall out of trees cold. No snow, luckily. So aside from, you're doing an awesome job in fighting fraud, and I know that you have several different campaigns and initiatives going on. So aside of your 9 to 5, how is Fraud Fight Club, and what other initiatives do you have in the near future?
So I'm definitely excited for Fraud Fight Club. It'll be round 3, so it'll be the 3rd year they're doing it, and I will be there April 14th and 15th. It's here in Charlotte, so I don't have to travel anywhere this year, which is also nice, but I'll be leading a couple of deep dives. One will be the intersection of fraud and KYC. I think that's a hot topic in the industry right now, so I'm really excited to get to do that one. And then I'm also doing a first year event called Safeguard. So it is the first year they were doing this event. It is a very unique event because they are focusing it on fraud and AI, but they are opening it up to all practitioners that are in fraud and then risk and compliance. So, not a lot of events have a well balanced audience of
Right.
practitioners like that. So, I'm very, very excited to be doing that event. And also, there is not a lot of events that are focusing primarily on AI. A lot of events are, of course, incorporating AI just because it is one of the many things that's going on in the industry and the world right now. But they have really created an event focused on AI and what that looks like in the fraud, risk, and compliance space. So I'm really excited about that one. It is set up more like a retreat. So it is taking place in Colorado, and it will have, of course, some small panels, some round tables. It's just very, very well curated, also with a lot of social and networking activities. I think a lot of times when we're at conferences, we don't get to actually network and talk to our peers that we're there with because we are spending a lot of the conference running around to catch a panel session
Right.
or a round table. And there just isn't a lot of space to actually network and talk to peers that are in either similar roles to you, or practitioners can talk to people that are in different roles and get those perspectives. So I really am excited this year to kind of be part of they're calling it the founding class first year event. We're still kind of working out the agenda and what everybody will be speaking on. But I think that one's going to be really, really special. So I'm excited for that one for sure.
Well, both sound awesome. So I can't wait to, because I know the Fraud Fight Club will be. I'll be able to watch that after, either during or after that one is over. It'll be recorded. But what about the you said Safeguard?
Hmm.
Will that one also be recorded? Like, will I be able to watch either in real time or after?
No recording for the actual event, but they are doing a and have been doing a webinar series leading up to the event. So every week, I think it's every week, they're releasing a webinar, which is kind of like a condensed version of the content that'll be at the conference. So definitely, if you haven't already been signing up to watch those, I would definitely do that. I'm actually doing one with them tomorrow. It'll be live at noon. So I'm excited for that.
Well, awesome.
But they have had just some really, really excellent guests on and some really great perspective, and they're very easy watches. They're 30 minutes or less.
Okay. And what platform can I tune in? Is that LinkedIn?
Yes, if you go to LinkedIn and go to Safeguard's event page, it will have the link to their site where you can actually read about the event and even apply to go through their hosted practitioner program, which is fantastic. It offers like travel and hotel reimbursement for approved people. And you get set up with, I think it's 8+ like curated meetings, just a really, really neat setup. But if you go to their website, you can read all about the event, and then you can also sign up for the webinar, the live webinars. And if you aren't able to watch the webinar live, you do get the recording sent afterwards, which is great.
Okay, no, that sounds amazing. I definitely want to check it out, especially if you're speaking at it right. I always like hearing your perspective and
Thank
the
you.
experience you bring to all of your events. Yeah, I'm definitely interested, especially when it comes to the intersection of risk, fraud, and AI, because I think a lot more of that needs to be discussed. And I'm getting more and more vested in it as I pursue, like it's the AI cert I'm going after right now that
That,
pairs well with risk. And I'm just like, oh, like every time I run into something like TPRM or ERM or
mhm.
ORM, I'm like, I know that. So it's really cool to see that evolution, especially now that I'm on this side of the career field, which is very fascinating when it comes to finance. So definitely always enjoy catching up with you. Like it's always a great conversation. I cannot wait to see the future events that you have going on, and I definitely want to plug all the places that people can find you. Where can they find you if they're trying to either connect with you or to watch your content?
Definitely LinkedIn. I always have my LinkedIn kept up to date with any podcast webinars far in advance. I love, just kind of donating my time to the industry via, all the conferences and podcasts and webinars. It's a great educational space as well. And I think that we need that. So definitely encourage people to follow me on LinkedIn if they're not already. and I am constantly sharing great content, not of just my own. I mean, tons of just amazing industry peers have blogs and articles, et cetera, that are just really fantastic.
No, absolutely. And I think you're being a little too humble. Like all your content is fantastic. So I've learned a lot, especially trying to catch up again with the financial services being very much different than Department of Defense and other federal organizations. So I'm always trying to keep up with your content. I will definitely share all of the links to all the places people can find you. Definitely continue to check us out. We're on WDJY 99.1 FM in the Atlanta metro area, as well as your podcast platform of choice. You can go to all the websites to go by our name. You can go to either ramcyber.io to check out our services. You can go to ryanwilliamssenior.com to check out all of my pet projects, or you can go to theothersideofthefirewall.com to pick up the guide that has, again, the experience and the just a lot of knowledge you would not gain in the field coming from people who've lived that experience, people of color who have broken through to the other side and have joined the ranks of cybersecurity professionals as well as entrepreneurs. Definitely check it out, theothersideofthefirewall.com. Thank you again for your time on the podcast, and for everybody listening, please stay safe, stay secure.